Yeah, so I want to talk about this new city that's being proposed, Tolosa, and I'm sure everybody's seen the renderings, 3D renderings of the buildings and the architecture and stuff like that. So I don't really want to show that, but I really want to get into the actual idea behind the city. And first, before I say anything, I think these experimental cities are really important. I believe that there's a bunch of people that are stuck in like super low productivity countries. There are a bunch of millions of Elon Musks, or maybe thousands of Elon Musks all around the world that can't immigrate to the US or to Europe or whatever to be productive. So they are just stuck making a little money and adding, little innovation to the world. So it's all about, most of your productivity is about your environment. So if it's possible, we should start up as many charter cities as possible all around the world. Give people opportunity to move in there and to definitely improve the productivity of the world. So yeah, I think these charter cities are really important. Part of the issue is all the land is being taken already by a country. So most of the land anyway. So I mean, I'm sure there's a couple things going on right now, a couple projects where people are trying, looking for like a small country to possibly lease their land, or basically if a country is kind of failing or has like low productivity, low growth, it would be interesting to set up this charter city, but the country basically has to let them create their own rules, create their own management. And so far it's been tough, but there's a lot of people working on it, and then I think, and also too, this is so let's say not only would a charter city be amazing for the people, a successful charter city will be amazing for the people that actually get to live there, it will shine a light on how bad and inefficient the governance is in our current legacy cities that we're living in. So once these charter cities would, they can experiment with different laws, maybe legalize some things, change around the whole governance structure, and if they are really successful, yeah, these old legacy cities in America and Europe and Asia, they can copy it. These charter cities could be like little laboratory experiments, and once these charter cities actually prove to be successful, the legacy cities will copy it, and everybody around the world will be a lot more better off. So yeah, but let's take a look here. So Tolosa, so basically with such incredible material progress over the last 100 years, why are there still so many people just barely getting by? Over the last couple of years, I've been focused on trying to answer that question. While researching, I was inspired by a book across called Progress and Poverty by Henry George, an late 19th century economist who was asking the same question. Capitalism has been an incredible economic model, but there are significant flaws, especially around income and wealth inequality. Yes, many economists would do say that, there's income inequality, and the faster an economy does grow, the more income inequality, but in the end, if it just keeps growing, the poor people do well too. I won't say they 100% catch up, but it rises their standard of living as well. Many of these flaws are a result of land ownership model that America was built on. There's a finite amount of land, and that the land was claimed generations ago. Communities were created, tax dollars were used to invest in the land, and therefore the land increased in value over time, with landowners not having to produce anything or take any risk. Well, I'm not sure this is true. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of landlords that lost a lot of money when the city went south, like in Detroit. So, I mean, real estate isn't without risk. Even if I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of people who buy and invest in land where they they lose money. So, land could essentially go from a barren piece of desert to a modern day city with billions or even trillions. Got me asking even more questions and thinking about a potential solution. What if that land had been owned by a community endowment? What if you took that land appreciation and gave it back to the community since they created the value? At first glance, it seems impossible to turn back the clock and have a do-over. The land was claimed, but there are plenty of land left. What if we had a clean slate demonstrate this new model? Well, pretty cool. I mean, there's also another option, which is instead of owning the government owning all the land, they can actually create the same endowment with money, but there are a whole bunch of, they can collect a whole bunch of taxes or just save a bunch of tax money and have a company or an investment fund, like a sovereign wealth fund that invests on behalf of the country. And basically, hypothetically, if they get 10%, like the stock market on average the last 100 years generated a 10% return, there's no reason that possibly they can eliminate taxes completely. If all the services can be provided from the sovereign wealth fund, from the appreciation on that, instead of taxing people year after year after year. And that could be a really good growth model, because I can see a ton of people moving there. The only thing is you have the constraint here. Well, it's a double-edged sword. They're scouting land in the U.S. and I don't know. I mean, in the U.S. you're still under the jurisdiction of the federal government. Like, yes, you can move states, you can move cities, but you still got a lot of systemic problems with the U.S. federal government. I think it would be cooler, possibly, if he was able to do it outside of the U.S. Probably give him a lot more freedom to experiment. However, it's a lot easier for talented people or to use the resources of the United States to build a city. So once thought the equitism model, I realized it was an opportunity to build a new city from scratch to demonstrate how the model could work. From there, my focus turned to making Tolosa the most sustainable city in the world. And then the thing is, like, well, also I'm not. Here's what I don't understand: is the government already owns all the land anyway. I mean, he makes it seem like people in all cities, the government owns land, and it's called property taxes. And if you don't pay the property taxes, even if you quote unquote own the land, they take that land from you. So, I mean, the citizens can already increase the property taxes there. So, I'm not sure. I mean, this is different from a little bit different from what we have now, but it's not much. It's just somehow I fail to see how this is a crazy different, or how revolutionary this is. Moving on, how can we do better for future generations, and what technology and other improvements in policy and design can we embed in the city that is only possible because of the fact that we've built it from scratch? Just imagine, oh yeah, so he's talking about sustainability, which is cool and all. I'm sure it's like very, a modern thing or a modern trendy thing to talk about. It could be helpful, but you gotta consider that sustainable buildings, they generally cost a lot more up front. So I don't know how much housing he can build. I'm sure this person has a limited budget. Even if it is bankrupt billionaire, they have a limited budget. So if everything is ultra sustainable, well, maybe I don't know how many poor people can live there. We've built a growing, diverse team of experts to continue to ask and solve these questions. Our vision is big. It's not only about creating a city at Tolosa itself, one that sets the standard for urban city living. Okay. Yes. So basically, we want this to be a blueprint for other cities. Whether we're looking at the new economic model or the new city, we're doing all of this for higher quality of life. Possibly the most important question are these: how can we create a better world for our kids and grandkids? How much happier could people be? That's what it's all about. We're going to have a little description of Mark Lore, the billionaire. I guess he started Jet.com. That was bought up by Walmart. And then he had another soap and diapers that's bought out by Amazon. So, and he owns a couple NBA teams, or one NBA team and some other basketball teams. So, yeah, I mean, the thing is, a successful, smart guy, but how much does he, just because I think there's a bit of a fallacy here too. Just because you created a couple .coms and you're a good manager of a .com businesses, you know, you might not, just because you're rich and you made money doesn't necessarily mean that you actually understand economics. So there's that. But hey, you know, I wish him the best. Here's like the architect. The group, you know, it's a lot of this is focused on architecture, which is cool. The architecture stuff is cool. No, that's what's trendy and that's what's gonna, you know, make it go viral and stuff like that. But you know, that's not really the crux of here. The crux of the city is this equitism. So basically, he describes it: economic system in which citizens have a stake in the city's land. As the city does better, residents do better. Well, I mean, in legacy cities, that's the same thing too, right? I mean, a lot of people, I mean, maybe not the majority, but a lot of people own property, and as the city does better, the government does collect more property taxes because, you know, because the land and the buildings are praised for more. And at any time, the citizens, technically, they can increase property taxes anyway, so imagine if all the land in Manhattan was owned by a community endowment focused on improving the quality of life for citizens. At current estimates, the endowment would be worth $1 trillion, and it could generate over $60 billion every year in income to invest back into the building of physical and human capital of the city. That's twice the current annual spend. Just imagine for a moment the impact of these additional funds and resources could have on individuals and the entire community. I mean, the only thing is you're assuming things. New York is extremely successful, but maybe that's because people could own that land and people spent a ton of money building on top of that land, you know, obviously for selfish reasons to generate more cash. So, you know, if Tolosa, I mean, you can't own the land and the property taxes were like the property tax is really high. How many people would really build like big skyscrapers or build, you know, invest big? I mean, it's all about returns. So would there be a lot of investment if people couldn't get that much return because you couldn't own the land? Well, I don't know. I mean, that'd be awesome to find out. And also too, he goes into, you can have twice the amount of government budget, but it's really all about how efficient the money is spent. Because I feel like, you know, let's say he was talking about Manhattan. Well, I'm sure Manhattan could use its current dollars to be twice more efficient. The government could. I mean, politically very hard because you got entrenched interest that, you know, already get paid, and, you know, they would fight like hell to get their budgets cut, or you know, overhauled, but I'm sure the way the current government is ran really inefficiently could be, with the current funds, could be twice better or twice more efficient in providing goods and services, or maybe mostly the services that invest into the community. Land is a finite resource that appreciates in value over time, in large part because of the growth and activity of the community. The land value also increases from the tax dollars that residents pay to support the city roads, bridges, tunnels, subways, and other infrastructure. Therefore, since the community is primarily a growth driver of land values, it seems fair that the community should benefit from the increases in land prices. Yeah, but that's the same. I mean, that's the same logic here. You got income taxes, you got sales taxes. Just because there's private ownership of land, quote unquote, that it's not really quite private ownership, because, you know, you basically just renting it from the government. You know, the government gets plenty of money from income taxes and sales taxes. So, you know, I just fail to see how this is a revolutionary concept. Equitism is a new economic model based on the premise of that citizens should have a stake in the land, and as the city does better, the residents do better. It retains the same system of capitalism, but with an additional funding mechanism for enhanced services through the land. With equitism, it will create a much higher level of social services offers to residents without any additional burdens on taxpayers. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, if that can be achieved, I mean, that's great. I mean, you still have the burden of the, if it's in the U.S., you still have the burden of the U.S. federal taxes, which is the highest. You know, unfortunately, I'd rather see it the opposite. Rather see the federal taxes the lowest and the local taxes, state taxes and local taxes the highest. Therefore, there could be some competition between cities. It could be a much more meaningful change between cities. They can become a much better testing laboratories for laws and models. Equitism and Telos starts with land and will be driven by the city's values. Initially, we'll find uninhabited land that will allow us to fully demonstrate the power of this idea. The land will be donated to community endowment, which will use the increased land values to fund enhanced city services, building blocks for prosperity, higher quality education, greater access to home ownership, improved health and wellness. I'm curious to see how home ownership would work if nobody can own the land. I mean, I guess it's you could. I guess it would be like in a like a condominium, a large condominium. So you'd actually own the 4 cement walls technically, but you have to pay HOA to maintain it, and in your HOA would pay would rent the land from the city, I guess. And as the city's population and demand for that land grows, the HOA would have to pay ever higher amount of rent to the city, which would really cap, really cap the amount of people can earn. I don't see much capital going in and being invested into the city if you built an awesome building, but then your rent and taxes, I mean, basically your property taxes on it kept going up as the city kept getting bigger. I mean, it's, as these margins, these profit margins get crushed, I don't know. I just don't see so much capital. I don't see this is very like a lucrative proposition when you can invest in property where, property tax is going to be way lower. This will provide a wider access to opportunity and a greater shared prosperity for all citizens. And I'm guessing it's going to be for better schools or probably community job training. That's what I'm thinking. There are many successful examples of the endowment model and the concept of land value return being reinvested back into the community to fund essential public services. Some of these examples include Alaska, Utah, nearly 20 cities throughout Pennsylvania, and leading universities such as Stanford are using land and other finite natural resources to provide essential support in education and other key areas of strengthening communities, while we plan to focus on a much larger scale, a broader social mission. Their success has given us confidence with this strategy and approach. Simply put, equitism is inclusive growth. Okay. Well, cool beans, man. I really wish this project luck, and I'll be following it. Hopefully they get it off the ground.